One of the things that's funniest in tech is the complete and utter lack of self-awareness sometimes. I mean, I see some things and I'm just like, do you hear yourself? Like, are you also listening?
You might not know the name Alexis Gay, but you know Alexis Gay. You've seen her videos, which perfectly articulate the absurdities of working in tech, probably as they started blowing up around the pandemic. As Alexis describes on this podcast, they then started really blowing up. So much so that Alexis quit her career in tech, doing BD at Twilio and then Patreon, a company built to support creators, to become a creator herself, a comedian and podcast host. In many ways, this conversation is an exploration of how a keener, overachiever, improv drama kid abandoned the tech career path many of us are still on to become an entrepreneur in the new media landscape. Very topical 2022 stuff. But as I noted above, she's still talking and thinking about tech. On her excellent podcast, Non-Technical, this keener, overachiever, improv drama kid spends a lot of time speaking to people like Mark Cuban and Kara Swisher to find and enjoy the humanity within some of tech's biggest names. I could never do it. Contradictions abound, but that's what makes this a very enjoyable conversation with a very interesting person. So it's time to learn a little bit more about Alexis Gay, the funniest person in tech. Let's dig in. Alexis Gay, why are you so funny? These are the hard-hitting questions you will be asked on the BetaKit podcast.
What a question.
Yeah. I wanted to start with a doozy.
Yeah, hell yeah. Let's jump right in. Honestly, I don't necessarily think I am that funny. What I think is that I've identified a couple things that I wanted to get good at, I wanted to get better at a long time ago, and then I have worked most days to get better at those things. It's just that those things happen to be performing comedy, writing comedy, editing video, interviewing, etc.
Okay, wonderful pivot to my next question, which you knew nothing about. I think I want to talk about the business side of you being a creator at some point. But first, we got to lay out your journey.
The journey.
And I'll just say it. You definitely seem like an improv drama kid. and I, to the extent that I don't think you would be insulted by me bringing that up.
Absolutely not. What am I going to do? Hide it? Come on.
And by this point, when I re-record the intro that we'll play in front of this, our listeners will know that you worked at Patreon supporting creators. But I want to dig into when these things that you decided to work on and become really good at started. You were an improv drama nerd kid before you were a tech business nerd kid.
Absolutely.
Take us back.
I'm going to take you way back. I'm going to take you so much farther back than you are hoping to go.
Couldn't be possible. In the beginning.
In preschool, I was chosen to be the narrator of our Christmas pageant.
Oh shit, you're not even kidding. In
I'm
preschool.
not joking. 4 years old. And that was the first time I had ever been on stage. It was the first time I ever had the awareness of what it meant to perform, to be on stage. As a 4-year-old, I got the worst stage fright I have ever gotten, possibly the worst stage fright anyone has ever gotten. Screaming, crying in the bathroom, I'm not going to do it. Telling my mom, I just have this memory of being like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I can't do it. I am not joking when I tell you I have a vivid memory all these years later of being on stage and saying those first few lines and being like, this is incredible.
Oh, you got that little hit.
Right off the bat, 4 years old. Hook 'em young, hook 'em for life. I think that's the motto of the entertainment industry. Since that point, I did a lot of acting growing up. I was always a drama kid, but as much as I was a drama kid, I was equal parts want to get good grades kid. So I was never the sort of person in the school play that was like, I don't need science. I was like, I would like an A, please.
Yes.
And so those dual tracks coexisted.
I need to be loved along all vectors.
Look at me, and also I would like to, yes. Look at me and look at this paper and give it an A. So basically that dual track has been present in me forever. And when you look back all these years later, it looks like, well, of course I ended up doing what I do now and took the path that I took. But at the time, it was not clear which side would win, though in my heart, my plan, my goal was to, quote, be an actress.
Yes, but the person who wants to be honored and validated needs money and a career and those
Isn't it
things.
funny how it works like that?
Oh, no. I was going to ask you. So at what point were you just like, you know what's really cool? Working at companies like Twilio and the like and
Health
doing
insurance.
business development.
Yeah, equity. Yeah. What's interesting is that it had my head in this zone throughout college. I thought, well, I'm going to be an actress, but I'm also going to get a business minor. I'm going to study in a program that lets me take classes from all over the school. I went to NYU School for Individualized Studies, so I got to design my own major. And then when I graduated, or when I was about to graduate, thinking, what is going to happen next? Guess it's acting time. And in 2013, when I graduated, there was no do it yourself, just start a YouTube channel kind of a vibe. Now, don't get me wrong, YouTube, of course, existed. There were people making some money, but there were like 3 people making money. It was not anywhere near as common or as accessible as it is today. And so the only path I saw forward to acting was waiting around to get picked by somebody else. And I wasn't interested. And I started working at a tech startup in New York in 2013, which was the opposite of waiting around to get picked. All I had to do to get more responsibility at this company was raise my hand and be like, I'll do that thing. And they were like, intern, you got it.
Yeah, just even showing up. You don't even have to raise your hand sometimes. It might
No,
be thrown
just show
at
up
you.
on time and be there and be nice, like somewhat nice, and work hard. And that was it. And as soon as I entered that environment in 2013, I was so hooked. And acting, this thing that I had spent up until that point, almost my entire conscious life thinking I was going to do, just fell away. And the thing that I wanted to do was tech, because it was so exciting and I felt like I was watching us create something out of nothing. And I had never had an experience like that before.
Okay, so then talk to me about the move from Twilio to Patreon then, because that seems like, and I resonate with this a lot, where it's like, I'm going to use these core skills I've developed, the validation that I have, and I'm just going to move ever closer to the thing that I truly want to be doing.
Interesting.
And if I surround myself with the people that are, if I help fulfill their dreams, then my dreams will downstream. It's just a dream funnel that I'm helping to fulfill.
I love that.
Or was it just like, Patreon raised some money? I like Pomplamoose. I want to email that guy and just be like,
God, how talented is Jack Conte and his
I'm
wife,
a
Natalie
Dead
Bayer?
Wax subscriber. His new
I
show.
love it.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's the real deal. So, okay, well, I'm going to tell you the truth on a couple points. Number one, I had truly and earnestly given up any notion that I wanted to be a full-time performer. I was so fulfilled by what I was doing at work that it didn't seem like a thing that I even wanted anymore. But I was working at a tech startup in New York for 3 years before I moved to San Francisco to work at Twilio. And that's actually where a big pivot happened, because Twilio, even at the time in 2016, they had just gone public, big company, great company, really good product, strong leadership, etc. All of a sudden I was working there and my life was all tech all the time. And I had never had an experience like that before, because even working in tech in New York, you're walking on the sidewalk alongside people from all different industries, pursuing their own individual passions. The city has tons of arts and culture. And then I wind up in San Francisco working for at that time, I think, 800-person tech company. And it was all I did. And so I only started doing comedy at that point by taking improv classes, because I wanted a hobby that felt outside of tech.
Okay, so the improv didn't start until much later.
That's right.
So it became a hobby to keep you sane.
Yes.
To stay career focused. Okay.
That's right. And then in terms of why Patreon, I actually took time off between Twilio and Patreon because and this is nothing against Twilio, the company. It was just my own experience there. It wasn't what I wanted. And so when I stopped working there, I had to have this moment of, oof, that was not really what I expected it to be. I had been pretty set on my plan up until that point, tech-wise. I was like, okay, I've worked at a small, scrappy startup in New York. Now I'm going to go work at a big public tech company in San Francisco. And then I'm going to do this, and then I'll probably go to business school, and then I'll do this, and then I'll be a CEO of something. And it was all just like, okay, keep going, keep going. But when Twilio, or that job at least, wasn't all I thought it was cracked up to be, I had to have this like come to Jesus of like, what happened? How did that go wrong? And I took this time off to figure out where I had sort of deviated from what would be right for me. And I actually used that time to start making videos. That was in 2017. I was making videos as a way to make sure that I used my time unemployed wisely. I felt that I was in peril of watching a season of Netflix a day.
Yeah, there's a lot of video games available at that
There's
time that
so
you could have
many.
just...
There's so many.
I feel like we should talk a bit about the work that you do. I think your videos walk a really good balance of both grabbing or identifying the conversation happening at that moment in tech and then also being exhausted by it. Katie, why don't we run the clip that everyone probably knows Alexis by?
We're going remote. We're going remote. We're going remote. Oh, we're going fully remote. We're starting with a hybrid model, but I think we'll end up going fully remote. I've been getting really into low alcohol aperitifs. Oh, are those the new Allbirds? She went to Austin. He's in Miami. They're doing van life.
So I guess I hate this question. I'm going to ask it because I can't think of a better question.
That's okay.
What's your creative process?
I love this question. I don't think that's a bad question at all.
Okay, thank you.
There's a couple different ways to answer that. Almost every video I've made has been some facet of me as a person, but dialed all the way up. Dialed up to 11.
Good to know. Good to have that on the record.
Yes. Something that I think about sometimes is, here's this thing I notice myself doing or thinking or saying. What if I was worse?
What if the self-awareness just left my body?
Exactly. Great. And this is a term that I use a lot when I talk about this, self-awareness. It's something that I try to bring to my work, my comedy, the videos that I make, and also just my life. I try to be self-aware. I'm sure we all try. But I find that one of the things that's funniest in tech is the complete and utter lack of self-awareness sometimes. It makes me laugh. I mean, I see some things and I'm just like, do you hear yourself? Like, are you also listening?
Okay, so this is where we turn the camera lens to focus on the people that you're standing beside, hearing, and because I haven't been in SF like in a professional capacity and I just did the math and it's longer than I was willing to say on this podcast. Let's say like more than 10 years. And SF was a very different place then and tech was very different.
Yeah.
I know that like the public perception of that, whether in tech or out, is basically your video content. I don't want to say this is verbatim because obviously that would diminish your like authorial voice for this stuff. But like you're meeting these people. These things were said by someone.
Well, let's even take it one step farther. I have said some of those things. I've said a lot of those things. They're not my proudest moments, but it's true. And it's not just me. It's friends of mine or people I meet or people I overhear or things I read online. And then it's just this mashed together combination of all those different things. The reason why I make it very clear that I'm also making fun of myself is that I think that's an important part of how I'm approaching these topics when I, quote, make fun of them, because I'm not trying to do it in a way that feels so harsh that it is going to feel mean. I don't desire for anything that I do to feel mean.
Well, actually, Katie, let's roll another clip because I want to counter this by letting everyone know about the layoff CEO.
This is a really challenging day for me. It's days like this where my job is the hardest. I do want to say our head of people will be coming on right after this. She will address any DNI related questions. I'm not even gonna try. Gotta stay lean. Sorry, I thought I was going to cry. Gotta stay lean.
So the layoff CEO, which I can attest as a reporter in the space, actually exists as a human being.
That's
and those
true.
things are said. Is that maybe the outside boundary, or are you trying to find humanity in someone who's just like, and now our head of people will come to say the things that I will not touch with a 10-foot pole because they are very hard and I was not committed to doing the hard thing about hard things.
No one prepped me. Okay, here's the thing.
This wasn't discussed at YC.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, yes, I think that this video actually is a couple degrees away from most of the things that I've made because I can't speak to this experience myself. I've never had to lay people off. I had to thread, or at least I tried to thread, a very thin needle with this video, such as to not disparage people who are genuinely in a very difficult position of having to remove people from their jobs, but not lose the impact of just how much I saw some people centering themselves in a narrative that really should not have been about them.
This is very hard for me. I will open up my network. No one could have foreseen that what we did over the last, yes, okay.
I know. Well, that I have to say is the part that I take most seriously about all this, which is that the audacity of some of these people to be like, look, this is just something we had to do. And it's like, you accepted a $1 billion valuation knowing full well you could not support it.
Okay, now this is now turning into a normal BetaKit podcast. But to that point, how then do you do, I guess, like topic identification of like, this is obviously layoffs are happening. I thought your Web3 clip was also very good because it speaks to everyone's urgent need to stay in the know of something that like doesn't really make sense. But are there things that you won't touch because they're too close to the line or don't maybe represent the empathy that you want to have with your content?
Oh, cool question. No one's asked me that before.
Because by way of comparison, like Data Dave, I have been there.
Which side? Were you Data Dave?
Oh no, I was the non-technical product manager doing whatever I could through it was booze, anything I could throw at this
Favors.
guy to just do what I needed to do my job that he believed wasn't necessary because he believed that I wasn't necessary in the role, right? So even in that position, the struggle is real for both sides of a very common startup dynamic.
And so your question is, are there any topics that I won't
touch or stay away from, even if it's like the tip of everyone's tongue, simply because you can't find a way in to understand, like Data Dave just wanted to play some video games. He's got to pull the financial numbers.
That one is purely from personal experience. Okay. No question. I mean, I ran at Patreon, I built out the business operations team on go-to-market, and then I ran the creator partnerships team, which is the equivalent to the sales team. And I mean, when I started there, we had an out-of-date Salesforce instance, and I built us a business development pipeline in a Google Sheet. And then I spent like 6 months making sure that we could actually get our Salesforce instance into a place where we could use it for the partnerships team. And then eventually we had to connect it to our backend data infrastructure. And that's where the fun really started.
Okay. So that was ripped raw, still beating from your heart. Okay.
Yeah. I had coworkers text me and be like, that was just you. I was like, I know. That was me. Yeah, that's even like what I used to wear and everything.
Also not using the dashboard, because when that was the moment where I was like, like this is getting too close to the metal in terms of.
Yeah, I worked for so long with my data partner to build an inbound lead funnel dash, and it never really saw the light of day.
Okay, so we've been talking about a really funny thing that our listeners might not have seen. So this is going to be the final clip that we're going to throw to. And I just, whatever side of this divide you're on, listeners, realize that this is a very true and real moment that has happened before and will happen again.
Hey, Dave. Got any interesting Jira tickets today?
I got 12 tickets from you.
Yes.
And I just have a lot of other tickets.
Yeah, totally. But I selected P0 on the little drop down.
And I fixed that.
Okay, they were giving me sort of a P0 energy when I filed them, like you asked me to.
Yeah, and we'll see next sprint if there's bandwidth.
You said that last sprint. I'm sorry, my bad, I'm sorry, I know. Okay, look, we are just two chill people, being chill, trying to move data in a fun, chill way.
You seem so chill right now.
I am, thank you for noticing. If you do this for me, I won't talk to you again for the rest of the calendar year.
Deal.
It would just be so Did you say yes?
I did, but this is the last.
Oh my God, thank you. Yes. Woo! You're the best, Data Dave!
Did you know that Hardtech, Canada's biggest hardware event, is returning for another year in person and virtually? Hardtech is where hardware startups can connect and exchange ideas, and where investors find the next big thing in hardware innovation. Backed by tech sponsors like Google Cloud and moderated by Aaron Burry, CEO of Willful, also friend of the pod and former BetaKit managing editor, this year is going to be the biggest hardware conference Canada has ever seen. And it's all happening November 9th at the Venture Lab Innovation Space in Markham. In-person tickets are limited and selling fast, so get your in-person or virtual tickets today by visiting hardtech.ca. That's hardtech.ca. Are people now proactively sending you phrases, statements, pivot podcast episodes, like things that you can reference, or are you still trying to get back to your experience?
Well, it's a little harder to lean on only my experience now because I've been doing comedy in my podcast full time for almost 2 years. And so I'm no longer working. I'm no longer a tech employee.
You can't even do Web3 content. You're still in a Web2 paradigm.
I know.
with your
Can you
experience.
believe? It's funny though. People come up to me sometimes and they're like, "Oh, I have this video idea for you." I'm sure you're so tired of hearing that. I'm like, "Absolutely not. Tell me what's going on. Plug me in." But the truth is that in terms of topics that I won't touch, I tend to think about it more as like, what are some of my own guardrails about the types of things that I want to make and want to be known for? And so that comment I made earlier about being too mean, that is important to me. And I think it would be very rare for me to call somebody out by name, for example, unless it's done in sort of like a loving wink, wink kind of a way. But topic-wise, I'm super open. And, a large amount of the things I've made have had nothing to do with tech or business. It's about 50-50.
Okay. I want to pick at this a little bit because beyond your stand-up, which I have not seen too much of because I don't leave my house, and your kind of like video creations, you also have a podcast. You are a podcaster.
Do.
We were talking podcast before the recording started. You have this podcast where you talk to influential people from tech, media, business, and beyond about everything except their resumes. What's behind your desire to share human moments with people that only seem to talk about their work and their resumes? That seems like a really interesting, like I'm going to take the people that we only hear from a business lens, from a work lens, and then force humanity out of them.
Yes. The truth is, if you're trying to make something regularly, if you're trying to make a lot of something like a weekly podcast, the advice I would give you is to pick something that you are genuinely interested in or excited to learn about and talk about, right? That's pretty conventional wisdom when it comes to creating things on a regular basis. And I've consumed a lot of tech interviews in my life. When I would prepare for job interviews, I would listen to Recode and listen to Kara Swisher interview CEOs so that I could understand what the CEOs were thinking about, so that if long-term strategy came up in my job interviews, I could lean on things like, oh, well, I know the CEO is looking to do this. Here's my perspective. And so I've heard a lot of those interviews in my life. The moments where the humanity cracked through, like a light shining through the sliver of a door, those were the most interesting moments of that interview for me every single time.
Revelatory. How hard do you go searching for those moments? Are you bringing a chisel with them to crack through that? I would say I enjoyed the Casey Newton and Alexis Ohanian episodes the most because they actually seem like genuinely human people. And then when I was scrolling through the very well produced, expertly produced video clips of your podcast, I was just like, I don't want to know these people. These are the people that are surrounding me in office or that we write about. Why did you want to go find them? Well, I don't. If I want to find human people that I connect with, there's like so many places outside of tech. Were you like almost even trying to prove to yourself that these people in your career in this space can be as human as the drama improv nerds in your other worlds?
Oh, I love that. No, I'm not out here on a mission to humanize.
Kara Swisher?
I'm not out here, trying to
said it,
humanize
so you don't have to.
successful
Yeah.
people. Thank you. That's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in people who have done big, incredible things, but who they are. Because I find resumes impressive, sure, a little bit, but that tells me nothing about the person behind the resume. We don't get to know any of that. And so I'm so much more interested in what is this person like to have a drink with? What is this person like to sit down and have a coffee with? And that's the feeling that I try to create with my podcast.
Okay, well, then who's in promotion of this other podcast that isn't mine? What is the favorite?
Non-technical.
we'll do a full thing at the end. I want to make sure people have all of your links. What was the conversation that you enjoyed the most, or was the most surprising of a person that you're like, I would definitely have a beer with this person that you would normally only Slack message?
Love this question. Okay. Wow. I've said that 1,000 times, but I do really like all of your questions.
It sucks because Katie usually cuts this out. Because to your point, with this kind of new series or us expanding the portfolio of our podcast episodes, I'm just calling shots and bringing on people that I want to speak to, not people that we have to, because like open banking regulations in Canada suck still.
I mean, you can have me on to talk about that anytime.
That is recorded. That is on record. So be careful what you ask for. But again, if anyone in our audience is going to care about these types of interviews that we're starting to do and filter in with the rest of the stuff, but by God, I'm going to keep doing them because they are energizing, right?
Yeah.
So I would love to hear from you. Talk to me about on this mission to humanize robotic people, the person that you met.
That is not what I'm doing.
No. But the person that you were surprised to be like, oh, we could hang.
Well, two things. One, I have become legitimately good friends with several of my past podcast guests.
Incredible.
What do you think, Douglas? You too?
Well, I usually bring my friends on as podcast guests and then try to justify to the audience why they're a subject matter expert. That did kind of come up with like the Casey Newton pod, where who runs Platformer, which is this kind of like tech imprint, former Verge editor, still does work with them, really great content. And it was obvious that, again, disclosures, also an improv kid, that there were some things there. So are you trying to tell me that you're just trying to make friends?
I mean, if that was my only KPI, I'm crushing it.
Yes, awesome.
I'm absolutely crushing it on the guest to friend pipeline. But
crushing it and measuring it, right? Because you have to balance both sides of the personality.
Look, what gets measured gets managed. Okay, Douglas. Well, let me actually answer your fantastic question. One of the most surprising episodes that I've done was with Mark Cuban. Because he is in some ways such a large figurehead, both because he's on a nationally televised program, Shark Tank, because he's the owner of a sports franchise, which is, I think Billions refers to that as like knighthood in in the United States. And then, of course, for all of his like unbelievable companies and investments, whatever. And so Mark Cuban is just sort of this large presence. And then to sit down with him and be like, so do you believe in ghosts?
Which is a recurring question that you seem to ask.
I love that question. I don't ask it as much recently because I drop questions when I get bored of them and then I bring them back eventually when I'm excited again because I don't want to fake it. I don't want to be like, do you believe in ghosts? Like yes. I have to actually care about the answer for it to sound good. But what was fascinating was that this larger than life personality was just like kind of a guy when you asked him about kind of a guy stuff, like his family life and his weird hobbies and habits. And it was a lot of fun.
Doing dance videos with his daughters.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was one of my most surprising episodes for sure.
This is where I do my like Neeli from Decoder switch. And we're going to talk the business of Alexis Inc. When was the moment you knew that the stuff that you were doing to kind of keep yourself sane while working in tech was going to be your future, your new career?
I think there are 3 distinct moments. There was no dam breaking open and then all of a sudden I'm going to go leave my job and see you never, tech. I think what happened was over time, I became more interested in doing this than my somewhat important job at Patreon. I was managing a team of 7 people, and I loved being a manager. That was the hardest thing to walk away from. I loved being a manager. It was so fulfilling. And as soon as I started feeling my heart kind of go in this other direction, I felt really obligated to pay attention to that so that I wasn't leaving these 7 people who were depending on me to shepherd their careers behind. That would have been so antithetical to everything that I had been about as a manager. And so as soon as I was like more interested in writing my tweets and working on editing videos than attending like very important Zooms, I was like, okay, perhaps it's time to make a change.
Yeah, this is where all my employees are like, how come Douglas doesn't make a change? Because all he does is work on his tweets. Okay, but so then, and maybe this ties into another question, which might be like, how do you not have a Patreon yourself?
Okay, so I mentioned this earlier, but at Patreon, so I was hired to be the first person, like first outside hire to join the creator partnerships team and work with creators who already had big, big audiences and help them understand how to use membership and therefore Patreon. This was in 2018. Now that seems silly, right? I mean, oh, how to use membership? It's so common, but in 2018 it was not. I was also hired because, like I said, I could do the ops stuff, which was amazing. So fun. And then by the time I left with that team of 7, I was running the creator partnerships team and had built out the biz ops team. And so I share all that because I think I am top 1% most qualified on the planet to know how and when to like run a good Patreon. I really think so. Just sheer numbers, sheer data points. And I'm sure that my knowledge gets more and more outdated every day. But I'm just saying, I think I have like a pretty good sense. I would hope so after 3 years. However, I don't believe that I necessarily have the perfect formula to run a successful membership business right now. It has nothing to do with Patreon. It's more about the notion of membership itself.
No, I get it, but I'm interested because we launched our Patreon last year after toying with the idea for 4 or 5, and there was a couple reasons around that. It's like, particularly for an independent news publication that is not paywalled in any way, we're like, how can we give things to people so that they do this, and how can we take their money and not be conflicted or offer rewards? And it took us a very long time to scope that out. But I also was like, we're only going to be able to make this ask once. And I was waiting until maybe too late to make the ask. But I was also like, if I make this ask of this ecosystem that I've put basically my whole career into because I chose to stay in Canada, and they're like, nah, I am out. I will just walk into the sunset or the ocean, depending upon like where I am, like whatever is closest to get me to the horizon, because I couldn't handle the rejection of like the sweat equity put into something that
would be a very painful rejection.
So I completely understand, even for different motivations, like waiting to call your shot when you think the moment's right, particularly since you're so informed. But talk to me about like why, like, because there are tons of creators that are like, give me money right now and I will use it to produce the next video, which you therefore, watch and enjoy. How does that not directly align to like what you're doing?
Totally. It actually has more to do with what I can deliver on that's special and that's membership specific than it has to do on what I would do with the extra revenue. In my opinion, to run a good Patreon, you need to have an audience that knows exactly what it is they love about you, what they get from you. So whether that's like, oh, I love this type of video and they come out this many days a week, or, oh, I love this podcast. This podcast is everything and it comes out weekly, whatever that is. And I know you need to have a large enough community around that type of consistent content, because only a certain percentage of it is going to be engaged enough to even consider your Patreon, let alone then take their credit card out. And so you have to have such a strong top of funnel that knows you for the consistent thing that you are then going to be able to deliver more on for your membership. It would not be enough for me to simply say, hey, I'm starting a Patreon for non-technical, my podcast. I will also then have to say what you get for being a part of that membership. And I, do not have time to do any more stuff. And then B, I didn't feel like offering something like, oh, you get the video would be enough. And I would talk to creators about this being a value for value exchange. It's not soliciting donations. It's not taking handouts. This is simply saying, here's a thing that I am doing. It is optional. It is yours. If you'd like it, it costs this much. And coming from a empowered perspective instead of a, oh my gosh, anything
Please,
helps. Yeah, because that's not a strong business perspective to come from. And so for me, I would much rather wait until I feel like I know what I can deliver on that's special, that's worth paying for, that's going to be worth the money to my audience, than do it in a direction that feels like, A, this took me a lot of time, B, I'm not making that much money from it, and C, my audience isn't feeling super valued by what they're getting in return.
Okay. So, but what about, and if this is a completely crazy idea, like just stop me.
Yeah.
A really nice t-shirt. Like a really, really good, high quality.
Like an American Apparel 2013 tri-blend tee.
You even knew the brand and the year. That is the perfect example. Those things are still.
Yes, they were so soft. I know. I have so many of them, and I will never give these up. You can only give a t-shirt once, really.
What was the third moment then?
The third moment was during the pandemic, was when my online audience started growing at a much faster clip. I'd been making things on the internet and off the internet. I performed improv. I performed stand-up for several years. So I'd been doing things on the internet for a while before many people really cared. And that's not a complaint. I was never the type of person making things online going, nobody understands my artistic genius. Why does this only have 100 views? I was like, okay, 100. That's more than 0. That's great. And I mean that earnestly. I know that sounds like sort of false humility, but my approach to this whole thing has always just been like, you have to keep going. Like there's no one silver bullet moment that happens. And so when I got my quote, like lucky opportunity was when one video just happened to rise above the rest in April of 2020 and quote, go viral, at least to get so many more views than anything I had ever done on the internet prior that the comparison is ridiculous. Like up until that point, the most views on Twitter a video of mine had gotten was 1,100. This video that I'm referencing got 3.1 million views in a week. And so to say that changed the nature of my audience is a huge understatement. But the thing is, I really believe it's because when you then looked back at my accounts, you saw all this stuff that had come before it. And so there was something there for people to latch onto. And so my audience kept growing and growing because I kept making things and putting them out. And then I had a coffee chat with one of my best friends, Mara, and she was like, so are you going to do this full time? Like you could.
There's always a close person in your network that comes to you and says the thing. I'll say what my friend and mentor said to me when we spun out BetaKit as his own company. He's like, shit or get off the pot. And it's like that moment where it's like, I remember where I was in like a stairwell trying to secret a call being like, am I actually going to like acquire this thing and like start a company? And they're like, yeah, you idiot. You should have been thinking about this before.
Sometimes you need somebody to ask you the right questions. You know, she didn't say, you should do this and here's how. She just said, is this what you want to do? Because you could. This is how you can tell she's one of my best friends and one of the smartest people I know, which helps. She said, what is standing, just hypothetically, what is between you and leaving your job and doing it? Like, what's the thing that would have to get done? Is it money? Is it whatever? What is it? And I was like, I need to do like a P&L. I would need a financial plan. And then after that conversation, I went home and it took me like 20 minutes. And I did a quick P&L, a quick financial plan for what a 6-month period would look like. And then I let the idea marinate for a couple more weeks. And then I resigned from Patreon. And then I did it.
So this is where we get to Alexis Inc. a little bit.
Yes.
You're talking P&Ls and other things that I totally know about as a liberal arts major. Again, going back to the decoder question that Neil I always ask is like, what's your org chart look like? And that's great for large and medium-sized organizations because most companies, unless you've worked for large organizations, like they seem completely contained in one identity. And then you work inside them and you realize that there are a bunch of small 5-person teams scaled around the world. But it means even more for like the self-employed. So how do you run Alexis Inc., which I assume is the name of your incorporation?
Do you want to know? The actual name of my corporation is very close to Alexis Inc.
Please tell me.
It's Yay Alexis Gay LLC.
Okay, perfect. Ours is actually BetaKit Incorporated and not like BetaKit Inc., but because BetaKit was a property that existed previously, I wasn't quite sure if there was already a BetaKit Inc. existing. So I named it BetaKit Incorporated. So technically
So are you BetaKit Incorporated Inc.?
Yes.
Oh, that's incredible.
Which it just tickles me.
That's hysterical.
Yes. And my lawyers love it too. They're like super happy that I run a
they're
business.
Stoked. You're like, isn't this funny? Mine, it's Yay Alexis Gay LLC because I didn't want to waste time coming up with an LLC. I was like, this is my Twitter handle, and now it's a company. Enjoy, government. Okay, so I run everything that I do like a startup, and I don't think that's an accident. I think that's simply how I know how to run things, and that ethos means a couple things. One, it means that I try to experiment and also start when things are just okay enough to be acceptable and then make them better over time instead of waiting for something to be perfect before I put it out. And it also means that I try not to take on big, expensive, or complicated endeavors right off the bat without first having some proof points leading up to it that I can pull that off. For example, the video series you mentioned that included Data Dave was like a 3-part video series where I had 2 friends on camera. I had a production assistant. My friend Ben Burke co-wrote them with me. And then Data Dave is an improv friend who is an engineer in San Francisco.
Don't tell me his real name. I want to forever know him as Data Dave.
No, he's Data Dave now. that was not something that I thought that I could have pulled off, co-writing while also acting and directing and producing it, until I had done all these other little things leading up to it, right? Like that could not have been the first thing I ever made. And I think similarly, when you're in a startup environment, you start with what is like the scrappiest, least expensive way that I can do this thing. And then if that works, let me make it a little bit nicer next time. Let me maybe do it a little bit faster next time, etc. So that's the ethos that drives a lot of what I do. My org chart, I have 3 people who work with me part-time. I have a podcast editor / producer who joins me on my recordings. He does the audio edit for my shows. I maintain the content edit so that I can, cut anecdotes when I'm boring, add the laugh track, and then I have a part-time admin who is virtual. And then I have a part-time associate who helps me out with everything else in between, writing podcast descriptions, helping me with sponsor recaps, things like that.
So you're owning the things that still matter and then outsourcing the rest that other people can do. Like some high quality video clips for your podcast.
Damn straight, Douglas, damn straight. That took us so very long. Yes.
It's also, I'm assuming, that very difficult to decide which of those things that you still want to own. I was actually working on final edit of another BetaKit podcast episode before we started recording this one.
Oh, how nice.
Going through the script and being like, I wasn't funny or insightful here.
Too.
Just throw that away.
Cut that out. It's hard though I wish I could just do every part of it all the time. But a friend of mine, Paul Davison, who is the CEO of Clubhouse, we had breakfast a few months ago, and he said, this is one of the most important things I've ever learned. There's no pride in doing everything yourself. And I was just like, damn, that is so real.
In fact, it's quite the opposite from pride. It's fear and exhaustion and depression. And
I know, but there's something about, maybe it's my career, how I'm wired, where I'm like, oh, I can do it. Of course I can do it. And it's been honestly a big learning to have to reckon with literal physics and be like, you cannot do all of these things in the 24-hour period that we call a day. Mm-hmm. So you have to find other people to do stuff.
Particularly for you, I would think, and not to blow smoke up your butt here, but you also have to be present and charming on camera. Part of the reason, other than all the reasons that we talked about before in terms of identifying people, mixed media is hard. And part of it is I'm doing this podcast right now in a background, hiding my home, wearing a toque indoors with a cat sitting there. Sometimes you just can't be ready to. I have a face for podcasting, so it's that's the situation. But you actually have to be the Alexis Gay that everyone knows.
Yes.
In your stuff, and if you look a little tired, if you've laid some people off,
I know
that sucks. I think it's why Jack at Patreon is always wearing that hat.
Oh my God, you think so?
So they can't see him sweating. Okay, let's close this off by doing a couple rapid fire cues, because I know you have to go get out of here and do probably some other podcast, unfortunately. Right now, could you give us, and maybe this is a teaser for future content, what is the current tech vibe check?
Well, I think one of the most interesting things about the tech world right now is that there isn't a super obvious frothy topic, right? There's no Web3 of right now. There's certain things that are happening, but there's almost it's the absence of things happening. And then there's other more granular things every couple of days there's news about Elon Musk and his Twitter acquisition. But that doesn't interest me enough to make a whole video about Elon Musk buying Twitter.
Okay, so then if you were to say looking to expand to new markets, you're that LLC, you're running this business, and maybe, Canada would be a place to do this stuff. If you were to do a Canadian tech focused video, obviously you're an expert in Canadian tech. We've known this for years.
Expert. Very.
Where would this video, because the video where you blew up was based in SF, which you're no longer there, and it was based in a very obviously SF location. Where would you base the Canadian tech version of that video, or whatever next video you'd be producing?
Can I ask you a question? Is there a right answer to this?
I will answer that question once you answer my first question.
I don't want to get it wrong. Okay, I'll tell you the truth. I would do it in Toronto because I love Toronto and because it has a great comedy scene and because I could also do some comedy while I'm there.
And so to answer your question, there was no right answer. And Canadian tech is actually a series of city-states all vying for total control. It would be Toronto. But if you said that, anyone still listening to this podcast from Vancouver is very upset right now.
Oh, no, I'm
No one
sorry.
from Montreal listens to this podcast, so they won't care.
So they don't care. I don't want to make anyone sad. I'll do one on. Maybe I could find something else to do one on. In
No,
Vancouver.
too late. Or then maybe you would have said something like, "Oh, what about Calgary? They're like fun," and you would have pissed everyone else off.
Oh, boy.
There was no right answer. I really appreciate you trying. I'm wondering, was that a more difficult question for you to hear and answer than "Why are you so funny?" Because I tried to bookend it with real zingers.
That one was hard because I really love Canada and I don't want to make anyone in Canada sad.
And that's exactly, as Canadians, what we want to hear. Just some sort of give back and acknowledgement. We want to be seen and recognized as well.
I see you, Canada. I see you.
For the members of our audience that you completely didn't just turn off right now,
Oh, God.
if they wanted to find your great works, where should they be going?
Oh, well, let me tell you, they can go right to the internet. I'm findable at Yay Alexis Gay on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Or you can find my podcast, Non-Technical, at Non-Technical Pod on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok as well. And if you want to see me do stand-up, there's a way to sign up for my email address located in my bio and all that good stuff. Did I say email address? I meant email list. I do not have my email address listed. But yeah, you can come see me do stand-up hopefully sometime soon. I've never done stand-up in Canada.
Alexis Gay, thank you so much for doing this. I very much look forward to becoming best friends now that you've been on my podcast.
Yes, I'm so excited about it too. Like we said, the guest to friend pipeline, it's real.
The BetaKit podcast is produced by BetaKit Incorporated. It's edited by Katie Lohr, and its hosts are Rob Kennedy and me, Douglas Saltis. To learn more about how you can support this podcast, head to patreon.com/BetaKit.